There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Carrie Madrid as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Carrie Madrid. And here's the thing. If you're here for the first time, I want to make sure I let you know what The Productive Podcaster is, because you're probably wondering, right? Well, it is a podcast for people interested in podcasting. Meaning this, if you are someone who doesn't have a podcast, but you're thinking about it, but you're like, I don't know, I got to get this right, got to get that right. This is for you, because I want to show you that there's no cookie cutter way. Just get started. If you're someone who's a veteran at it, been doing it for a while, but you still think, man, I wish I could do something to make myself unique. Well, I have guests on here who are doing different things, and they can show you some things that you may want to do, or you may find that they're running into some of the same challenges you have to make you feel a little better about the podcast you have. That is The Productive Podcaster. Now, what I want you to do, though, is make sure you share this with everybody. Let everyone know that you're listening to The Productive Podcaster, or whether you're watching it. Also, I want to make sure you guys are subscribing and let everyone that you know that they should subscribe as well to The Productive Podcaster. So I like to start off every single episode with a segment I like to call Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons.
Now, what is pros and cons? Pros and cons is where I give you guys a professional tip on how to be a productive podcaster. Well, in doing that today, I want to talk about scaling your podcast. What scale should you be on as far as your podcast? And it varies. What do I mean by that? Because some people want to get their podcast to 1 million downloads. Some people want to get to 100,000. Some people are just trying to get to 1,000. So it's where you are. But what I'm saying to you is this: wherever you are, make sure you are doing the things in accordance with getting it to that level. Don't try to go somewhere where you're not ready to go yet. Get there, then go to the next level. Focus on something that you can achieve. Get there, and then move on to a higher ground. Scale it accordingly, okay? That is pros and cons for today. What I want to do right now is take a short break. And when we're back, I have another special guest. Yes, you're saying it again, Barry. You always say your guests are special. It's because they are. I can't help it if my guests are cooler than yours not. So, but we'll be right back right after this break with more of The Productive Podcaster. How are you going to learn everything you need to know about starting a podcast? Well, at the Create Your Podcast Weekend, we put it all in 2 days and help you get your podcast going by next week. That's right, by next week. All you have to do is come to the Create Your Podcast Weekend and let us show you how to get your podcast up and running. We will show you how to attract listeners. We will show you how to get people to pay you for your products and services. What products and services? The products and services we show you how to create, all at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. All you have to do is go to createyourpodcastweekend.com and get registered today. And we have special bonuses. Some of you will even get us to give you the equipment to start your podcast. That's right. We're going to give some of you the podcasting equipment to get started. Go to createyourpodcastweekend.com. That's createyourpodcastweekend.com and get started on your podcast by next week. Why should you contact Media Boss Club right now? Well, because you can get a podcast done for you. You can learn all the aspects that go into putting together a great podcast and have someone else do it for you. That's right. We will build your podcast around your content and make it so you can concentrate on the money-making activities of your business. Contact MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com today, and let us get your podcast started right now. Welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. Now, let me tell you something. I know some strong people in my life. Now, let me tell you why I think they're strong. One is because I know that cancer is one of the things that affects people differently than it affects most anybody else in the world. I have some friends who have fought it, who are fighting it, who are dealing with it, and cancer tells me who the strong people are because it is not anything to play with. And it is something that will come after you, but you've got to fight back. And my guest today is someone who definitely shows people how to do that on her podcast. I want to have you guys welcome to the Productive Podcaster, my new friend, that's Carrie Madrid. Carrie, welcome to the Productive Podcaster.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I do feel like I know you really well.
Doesn't it seem that way? Guys, I'm telling you, this is when we were talking before the show. We had not had a conversation before this, but it feels like we know each other. It's just really cool. And I love that because one of these days I'm going to get up there, and you're in California, right?
Yes, Southern California.
One of my favorite places. So I'll have to get out there.
That's the power of social media, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, I have friends all over the world.
You and me both. You and me both. Look, and I want to get out to meet all of them.
Me too. I always say that I'm going to go like on a world tour to meet all my online friends.
Well, we'll intersect somewhere. Because I'll be doing the same thing. Yeah. So tell me about your podcast. Tell us the name of your podcast, first of all.
So it's called Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. And we launched it last August during COVID. And it's great. We talk obviously things that are related to breast cancer, and beyond. So everything from estate planning, which is good for everybody, dating after cancer to, just everything.
Cool. Yeah. So you said you started in COVID. That's the first thing I want to talk about. So starting during COVID, was that difficult or was it easier?
Actually, it was easy, and it was something that I had talked about doing before, but just really didn't. And I have a friend of mine who is a radio host and is married to another professional radio host who also produces podcasts. And I saw he had put a post on Facebook and said, "Hey, if anyone's interested, I'm producing podcasts full time now." And I was like, talk about this, and a week later, let him tell the story. A week later, we had 7 episodes recorded. So it was just something to sort of see if I liked it. And he was like, "Oh, you could do this." And I was like, "Okay, well, here we go." It's just an extension of my nonprofit.
Carrie, yeah. I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because a lot of people think that it is some daunting task that they have to give up their firstborn or whatever just to start a podcast. And just like that, in a week, you had 7 episodes. I love that.
You know what? It's just a conversation. I tell my guests all the time, they're like, "Well, what should I prepare for? Are you going to send me questions? Are you going to?" No, not unless there's something really specific we want to hone in on. And we know it's a long or it could be a long conversation. So we're going to hone in. Otherwise, it's just like this. We're just having a conversation and it happens to be recorded.
I tell people all the time, I say, you're putting off something for 2 years that could take you 2 weeks.
You know what? I know. And I was listening to your pro tip and it's so good. I mean, the thing is, like, I didn't know where this was going. I just knew there's a lot of people through social media that would look at the Care Project, which is my nonprofit, and go, "Oh my gosh, I wish I had a nonprofit." Or I mean, I wish I had like it's a survivor social club that we have through our nonprofit.
Love it.
And people are like, "Oh man, I wish I had that here." And I'm like, you know what? How can we extend this? And since everyone's at home anyway, why not make it a podcast? So some of the things we talk about here at the Care Project, we talk about on the podcast. So now it's listened to in over 16 different countries. So clearly it's resonating with somebody. Yeah, I don't know.
Clearly it is.
And I'm having a good time. So that's all that matters to me.
There you go. And see, my dearest friend in the world, she's dealing with cancer herself. And I tell her all the time, I said, "You are the strongest person I've ever known." And it's a battle, and people need to be able to know that there's someone who hears them.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely. And one of the things that we talk about that's really, really important is that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. It's okay to not be positive 100% of the time. Like I believe in keeping it real. So yes, we want to stay positive and we want to do this, but when people tell you that, it's sort of like, Do you think we're not already trying to do that? So one of
Oh,
my
God,
favorite
yes,
topics,
yes.
one of my favorite topics on the show is what not to say to a breast cancer patient, which is relative to any cancer patient.
Any cancer,
Yeah.
but right,
So
right.
really, it's not just a show for like anyone affected by breast cancer. We all know someone who's had it or any type of cancer. It's really
Mhm.
turned out to get really great reviews from people that are just like, man, I wish I had listened to this before, my friend was diagnosed or whatever, because man, I stuck my foot in my mouth and I'm like, it's okay. You know better now,
Yeah, the one thing when my friend told me that she had cancer and hers was leukemia,
Yeah.
and when she told me that she had it, I said the one thing that you will never hear me say to you is, "I know how you feel,"
Yeah.
because I don't, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that lie to
Yeah.
make you feel better, because I
Or
don't know how you feel.
people that this is one of the big things that people say, they go, you're going to be okay. And it's like, you can't say that to me. You don't know that, right? So that's we have a series within the podcast called Whining with Care. And what that is I
Mm,
get wine sponsors to send me wine, and I get 3 or 4 survivors here in studio, and we sit around, we taste the wine and promote the wine while giving them a platform to
mhm.
just not be positive if they don't want to
That is
be.
cool.
Yeah, so they get to whine and complain, and we validate them, and then we find a better perspective and go, you know what, I hear you, and now let's think about this.
And that's
Meanwhile, we
good.
taste the wine. It's great.
That's because see, my friend, I remember her telling me once. I was telling her how I said, "You're just so strong." She said, "I don't want to be strong."
Yeah.
That was one right there, and I was like, "I get it. You don't want to be strong." And I said, and I told her from that point, I said, "Look, if you don't want to be strong, don't be strong.
Yeah. It's okay.
Don't be." I said, "I don't need you to be strong. I'm just letting you know that I see your strength." But
Yeah,
yeah,
we
I
all
don't
want to say something, right? It's human nature. We want to say something.
want to say
And
something.
sometimes you just don't need to say anything other than, you know what? I'm here for you.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree, and that's the one thing I try to do. Okay? 'Cause I admire you for what you're doing because you're putting a voice to it.
Yeah.
That is so vitally important, and I can't even imagine. I know you've got story after story after story of people who feel that your podcast has helped them.
Yeah. I think connecting in particular the male patients who are so underrepresented. 1 in 8 women are diagnosed, and almost everybody knows that. But a lot of
Yeah,
people don't realize that 1 in 833 men are diagnosed with breast
I
cancer.
didn't know it was that low of a number. 1 in 833. Wow.
It is. And so oftentimes you'll hear the statistic, it's like 1 to 3% of all breast cancer cases. However, if that one person is your dad or your brother
Yeah,
or your husband or your son, that little percentage means nothing. It's your whole world. And
exactly,
so, yeah, I'm
exactly.
part of the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. So to me, it's all about giving them equal voice. And sometimes I give them more voices.
Oh, that is so wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I have my old friend on here today to talk about this. But no, this is so cool. So let me ask you: did you run into any challenges when you first started your podcast?
I think the challenge was just myself getting out of my head.
Ooh,
I didn't have the studio and equipment. I had my laptop. We had Zoom to use because everybody was home. And a
yeah,
lot of my guests are all over the world. So Zoom is a
yeah.
great way to use it. But I really just thought, well, I'll do a few episodes and see how it goes. And I would look at Chris and go, I don't know, is this? And he's like, you're fine, just talk. Like I didn't know, and I hadn't really listened to a lot of podcasts before. And so I
Mhm.
really had no idea, like, how does it work? Like, there's an intro, there's this, there's that. And does that need to be all in the recording? Like, he's like, look, you just have the conversation and let me do the rest. And I'm like, okay. So I got out of his way.
There you go. There you go.
So I just show up and talk.
No, that's another question I want to bring up. Do you feel that it's easy doing it in that format as opposed to if someone were talking all by themselves?
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because the other day I had a lot on my mind. And it's things that I know other survivors think of, like a fear of recurrence, right? We all talk about that. And how do you get through that day to day? Because there isn't a
Yeah,
day that goes by. I'm 9 years out, but I was a very advanced case.
praise
So
God.
I'm very high risk for recurrence. And so I don't live in fear. I think you know that about me, but
Mhm.
there isn't a day that goes by that it doesn't cross my mind at
Of
least
course.
twice a day. And it was really heavy on me because I know several people who are metastatic right now. And they're in this space where, oh my gosh, does that mean I'm going to die soon? And I wanted to just come in here and just start talking. And then I thought, who wants to listen to my voice the whole time? I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I might do some little short snippets of just things I think of. And I don't really know how effective that is or who might need that. But
let me tell you, what you're doing is so powerful and impactful. There are people that you haven't even reached that need you all over the world. And I mean, first of all, I want to thank you just for doing it because it's something that people need. I mean, I've heard of some of the cancer support groups that aren't really supportive.
yeah, I have a quick story about that.
Sure.
One of our Survivor Social members or Survivor Social Club members landed at the Care Project because she said that she went to a local agency, which is fantastic. They do great educational stuff. They can give you a mastectomy bra, they can give you wigs and all that. But when she went to their support group, she was having a day where she was really just angry, right? About just her losing her strength and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And she started to kind of vent when it was her time. And the moderator stopped her within 4 words and said, "Oh, no, we don't talk like that here. It's all positivity here." And she was like, "Excuse me? If I can't do it here, where can I do it?"
Where can I do it? Right.
Somehow she found the Care Project and landed here, and we keep it real. So if someone needs to vent, cuss, cry, whatever, we do that and we acknowledge it and we validate it and then we move on. So, the podcast is the same format.
Yeah. I've heard some horrible stories of a psychologist telling people, well, you're grieving right now because of the cancer. And it's like, no, I'm not grieving. And the psychologist, yeah, you are grieving. I'm like, don't tell a person they're grieving if they're not. They tell you they're not.
I think it's a process because I do believe that to an extent, but it's kind of like dealing with a death, right? You know how you go through waves of coping and dealing with it.
Right.
It's the same thing for a lot of cancer patients. You
But
go through different.
The story I'm telling you, this was a person who was told she'd been told by 3 different doctors she was going to die, and
geez.
Here we are. 14 years later, and she is still. But the thing is, a psychologist is telling her she's grieving because she's gonna die, but she's like, I'm not gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychologist is telling her this, and it's like, why are you going to someone who's telling you this?
So if you listen to my podcast, you'll hear me talk to and address medical professionals directly often, because there's things that I think they just don't think about because they haven't. I always say, once you go, like the old Jamaica commercials, right? So unless you've been diagnosed, unless you've gone through it, you don't know. And so they are coming from a clinical standpoint. Yes. In their mind, statistics say X, Y, and Z, and I give it to them. They have to give it to us straight. I don't want them to tell me everything's fine if I'm really and truly terminal and they can see it on a scan, right? But at the same time, they need to offer that same hope. And if they can't, they need to delegate that to a navigator.
I agree.
Who can be a liaison.
It's funny you said that because that's what one of my friends, she had 3 doctors tell her she was going to die, and she got this one oncologist who was very, very good. I mean, he became like family. Mm-hmm. And he told her, well, I'm never going to say you're going to die. And she says, well, what if there's nothing you can do? He said, I'll say there's nothing I can do. He said, but I'm not God. He said, I can do it right there. I can. But that's it.
That's it right there. I tell everybody, that comes through the door, and I honest to God believe this. Look, we all have an expiration date. I don't know when that is. I don't know. I feel like cancer survivors have a little advantage in that we take it a little more serious. Mm-hmm, we've already faced our mortality, whereas a lot of people haven't.
That's a good point.
Ooh, right. And so our perspective is way different. Like, I truly don't sweat the small stuff. Life really is freaking short.
I love that. Oh man.
Yeah. So you hear all those things, but you don't really feel it until you look death in the face.
And see, on that note, because we're going to wrap up the interview, but I want to say you're an author. What's the name of your book?
So I co-authored a book called Handle with Care, or Your Support Group in a Book. And it's a 2-time survivor and established author, Margaret Lush, came to me and said, let's do this book, and 100% of the proceeds will go to the Care Project.
Love
We'll
it.
get, we interviewed 12 survivors and got their perspective on various aspects of cancer. So all walks of life, including a male patient. And just, it's a great book that I hope to get into every hospital and treatment facility to hand to their newly diagnosed patients.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I got that in there before.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
No
it's
problem.
a great little handbook I wish I had when I was diagnosed.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
see, now you're serving other people.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, please, before we go, tell everyone the name of your podcast and where they can find it.
Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. It is on every stinking podcast platform.
Every stinking podcast. You heard that
Every
here first.
stinking podcast platform. Thank you,
But
Chris
Carrie,
Donovan.
first of all, thanks for being on the Productive Podcast. But guys, everybody, don't worry. She's not going anywhere. She's going to be right back. We're going to take a break, and she's going to come back to help us with our next segment. So stay right where you are. We'll be right back. It's time to be a boss, a media boss. If you're in business for yourself, it's time that you get your message out, and podcasting is the best way to do it. Let us create a done-for-you podcast experience with Media Boss Club. All you have to do is go to MediaBossClub.com and we'll create a done-for-you podcast right now. That's MediaBossClub.com. Starting a podcast can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably wondering if you're able to handle it. Well, why don't you just take 2 days and let us teach you how to do it at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. That's right. We're going to show you all the aspects of how to start your podcast, how to keep your podcast going, how to attract listeners, and how to make money with your podcast. CreateYourPodcastWeekend.com. Get registered right now. Let's face it, you've been talking about starting a podcast for quite some time, but you haven't started yet. Why is that? Could it be that you just don't have the time because your day-to-day keeps you so busy? Or could it be that you don't want to learn all the technical aspects that go into putting together a quality podcast? Well, at Media Boss Club, we take care of that for you. How would you like to have a done-for-you experience? That's right. At Media Boss Club, we build your podcast for you. We will edit your podcast. We will put in the music for you. We even put in commercial breaks that you can put your advertisers in. We will take care of all of the uploading to the great podcast platforms that are out there. That's right, we do everything. All you have to do is just right now go to MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com and let us handle the heavy lifting for you. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcast. Was I right or was I right? My old friend, Carrie Madrid, was fantastic.
Hey, watch the old.
Well, you heard her. She's here. My longtime friend friend of 30 minutes. But the thing is, she's right here. She's back. She hasn't gone anywhere. She said, watch the old. So she's right here. But guys, it's time for the segment of the show I like to call PodQuest.
PodQuest.
And PodQuest is where we take an audience question on podcasting and we answer it. Now, you're probably wondering right now, how can you get your question answered on PodQuest? Well, you have to join our Facebook group, which is called The Productive Podcaster. If you go to the Facebook group and you join the group and you engage. Now, let me be clear. When I say engage, I mean ask questions, answer questions about podcasting. This is not a chance for you to promote your podcast or any other wares that you have. It's the chance to be productive in the group, okay? We want you to do that. Otherwise, you'll be taken out of the group. So the question for today that we have is, can I really make money with podcasting? So Carrie, first we'll put the question to you.
Well, I'm going to punt it back to you, buddy, because I don't know. No, of course you can. Of course you can. Yeah, you can. I personally haven't gone that route yet. I'm pretty new to this, and I just sort of have been doing it to get my feelers out there, and now I'm ready to kind of take it to the next level and try to do so. sponsorships and whatnot. Yeah.
I love it. Well, and yes, you can make money with podcasting. I think the biggest problem that a lot of people have when they start podcasting is they go into it for the purpose of making money. And if you don't even have a plan, a following, if you don't even have a method that you're going to use to bring in money, then you're probably not going to make any money. But you can make money with podcasting. You can get it through sponsorship. You can get it through affiliate programs. You can get it through selling your own products and services. You can get it a number of ways. But yes, you can make money with podcasting. And that actually gives me an opportunity for a shameless plug I'm going to do right now. For those of you right now, because it's my podcast, I can do it. And
That's right.
I have coming up the Make Money from Media Challenge. The Make Money from Media Challenge. You guys can go to MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. That's MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. Register, get set up for the challenge, and you'll learn how you can make money, not just from podcasting, but other forms of media as well. So, Carrie, once again, before I let you go, please tell everybody again the name of your podcast and where they can find it.
The name of the podcast is Handle with Care. That's me. Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. All podcast platforms.
All right. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us here on the Productive Podcast. You guys make sure you go and subscribe and follow Handle with Care and support Carrie and her podcast and any other breast cancer patients that you know of as well, any other cancer. Just help them all and support them and just be there for them. Sometimes you have to just listen, like she said. Sometimes
and when in doubt, listen to my podcast and listen to the episodes Whining with Care. That'll tell you what not to say to a cancer patient.
Not to say. Perfect.
Yeah.
So, Carrie,
thanks so much for having me, really.
Thank you. So, guys, we move on to the next segment right now before we end the show. The next segment I have is my podcast profile. That's where I listen to a podcast that I thought you guys may be interested in as well. And that podcast I listened to is one called Honestly with Barry Weiss. Honestly with Barry Weiss. So she says that there are a lot of conversations that need to be talked about that happen a lot in private. So it's a cool podcast. I think you guys may like it if you listen to it. And it's time for our podcast giveaway. The podcast giveaway. This is where I give away a prize. I'm giving away a copy of my audio book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? My Amazon bestseller, Why Didn't You Get It Done? An audio copy is going to Nadia Jenkins. You get a copy of that. And if you're wondering how can you get some free gifts, well, join the Facebook group, like I said, and engage in the group positively. And we would love to make sure you get a gift as well. And as we wrap up the show, I'd love to end the show by giving you guys a productive quote for today. And today's quote comes from Mr. Tom Peters. And the quote is, "The simple act of paying positive attention to people has a great deal to do with productivity." Let me read that again for you. I love that. The simple act of paying positive attention to people has a great deal to do with productivity. That is by Tom Peters. So guys, pay some attention to people, some positive attention. And on that note, guys, that is the end of the Productive Podcaster for this week. Once again, the Make Money from Media Challenge. I want you guys to go ahead and get registered for that. Make Money from Media Challenge. Go to MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. I look forward to seeing you guys there. I want to thank my guest, Carrie Madrid, for joining us. Make sure you pay attention to Handle with Care and make sure you subscribe to the Productive Podcast and share it with everyone. And before I go, I like to say the same thing I say every week. Don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all and take action, everybody. See you next time on the Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.